Now, I know that maybe the migrants is not the main subject for you today, but we've got to kick off with it because it's now reaching epidemically ridiculous proportions. I mean, it's like a comedy show now, isn't it? You know, it's like Carry On Immigration, where you've got people genuinely standing in front of you saying, yeah, I'm frightened of water, can't go on that, can't do it. I mean, who in their right mind is going to believe that sort of cobblers?
So I think that this, in a way, sums up one of the problems with the whole issue around the migrant crisis, which is, on the one hand, a lot of us might be rather sceptical about whether the Rwanda scheme or the barges or Ascension Islands is any kind of a solution. And you kind of roll your eyes when you hear the Tories come out with this. But on the other hand, more importantly, when they then do decide that this is what they're going to do to solve the migrant crisis, there's just endless barriers put up. And I don't even blame these young men, which they're predominantly young men, for saying, I'm frightened of the water, I won't get on. One of the big issues that's used all the time, by the way, is it would be bad for my mental health.
Yeah.
Now, they have not arrived from all parts of the world with that script in their heads. Do you know what I mean?
Of course they haven't.
Traumatized by water. This is the script that we're familiar with in the UK, part of a kind of script. I don't mean cynically a script where you learn it off. I just mean this is the language of, if you want, snowflakery, of people who say, well, I can't do that, this will have a traumatic impact on me. And I'm sad to say it makes for the public to become completely cynical, because it seems that no matter what political decisions are made, there will be barriers. There will be people who will say, no, you can't do that. And that, in terms of democracy, is very dangerous, isn't it? Because you're effectively...
Well, because everybody with half a brain is going, this is clearly a load of old rubbish. I mean, there's a great piece in the Telegraph today in which it's talking about Lord Carlisle. I don't know if you know Lord Carlisle, but Lord Carlisle is actually questioning the existence of Greenpeace as a charity after the stunt they pulled on Rishi Sunak's house last week. He's also saying, I think quite smartly, these people are, if they want to be treated as a terrorist organisation and social disruptors, then they should not be sitting down at a table with government members to talk about, you know, our policy on climate change. And the same goes for Care for Calais. You know, if they want to run themselves as a sort of advocacy group for migrants, that's one thing. But they shouldn't have charitable status. They should be run as a private enterprise and they can fund themselves any way they like. But they should not have charitable status if they are secretly and actively undermining government policy.
So there's no doubt about it. Care for Calais are very well intentioned. They have a particular view, but I suppose it's the whole basis on which one minute it will be lawyers who say, no, you can't do that legally. Other people will be citing different international treaties and laws. We know that pieces of legislation brought in good faith, like, you know, domestic slavery or what have you, are then being exploited, loopholes. And the overall frustration of it all is that you're sitting at home, a member of the public, all that you want is somebody to control the borders.
Yeah.
That's a perfectly reasonable thing for a nation state to do. And every time somebody tries to stop the fact that those borders are being breached by people coming into the country illegally, you're told that you can't do anything about it. And it's that frustration, that underlying sense of powerlessness that I think is fueling a really quite negative attitude, because what's the point of politics? What's the point of democracy if every time the British public say, this must happen in our name as British citizens, we demand that this is what the politicians do, they're told, well, no, you can't do that because there's a rule against it. There's a law against it. It's going to offend this particular human rights group or what have you. And that's, I think, what is most dangerous about this, not even the specifics of the barge, but this absolute frustration of feeling you're being gaslit.
Yeah, well, exactly. Also, you say that they're well-intentioned, Care for Calais. They may well be well-intentioned, but they're well-intentioned in the interests of people coming here from abroad. They're not well-intentioned in the interests of local communities for which they allege that these people should go and live within. Because when there's a crime committed by one of these people, which there will inevitably be, and there has been in the past, not because all of them are criminals, but because some of them are, because we don't know who they all are, then are Care for Calais going to answer for that? Are they going to say that their advocacy led to somebody dangerous being housed in a community who shouldn't have ever been there?
Well, the point is the politicians should take no notice of Care for Calais. That's the point, right? They're entitled to exist as an advocacy group. Who cares, right? That's one thing. As you point out, the role of the political class is to act on behalf of what's in the best interests of the country and to do, as it were, what the public say that they should do. And if they have decided that one way of dealing with the influx and the huge influx of people who are illegally entering the UK is, for example, that they should stay in barges, if that's what it is, or they pass a law about Rwanda, they should be able to enact that without having to bow down and basically allow Care for Calais or any other charity, however well-meaning they might be, to get in the way. And what I really object to is the fact that the politicians almost like throw their hands up. I mean, I'm glad that, as you say, they resisted on the barge question. But and then, of course, then in the end, as you say, we then all remember that even if you fill the barge, that doesn't actually solve the problem.
Well, no.
But it is frustrating when you hear they are at last doing something. They're using this barge. And then the joke of it, of 15 people on it, you feel as though you're being slapped across the face every day.
Well, exactly. Well, I said this morning, even if they fill it up with 900-odd people, you know, there's still another 170,000 to go, and that was at the last count last month, as opposed to when the new count comes in, there's another 2,000 or 3,000 here. The whole thing is a shambles, and we're all sitting around trying to be nice about it and saying, oh well, we've got to say nice things, can't say horrible things, people might get upset. Well, I'm sick to death of people who get upset. They can go down there and get upset and go and talk to the local people who are pretty upset in Bexhill, in Essex, in Liverpool, in every single town in this bloody country who are fed up to the back teeth of walking down the street and seeing a load of migrants wandering about. You know, call me old-fashioned, sue me.
But Mike, my point would be, I'm not frightened or worried about migrants. I am frightened and furious about the fact that people are coming here. It's being accepted on face value by lots and lots of campaigners that they're fleeing war zones, that they're in distress for their life.
They got some nice luggage for the fleeing. I've been in a war zone. I was in Bosnia. I saw people fleeing war zones, and they were fleeing for their lives. They weren't carrying Samsonite, you know, silver containers full of all their aftershave.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying is, so we know that there is something wrong with the way that this narrative's been spun out to us on the one hand. And my only concern is, as far as I'm concerned, chancer migrants who want to come to this country because they want a better life is not the focus of my anger.
No.
My anger is the fact that we live in a country that cannot get control of its own borders and cannot see through political decisions that are made because they're so frightened of offending NGOs or charities who might accuse them of racism, that might accuse them of being anti-migrant. That's who we should have our anger against, not the lads who are kind of exploiting the loopholes. They're just like lads.
Well, yeah, but they're not just like lads, because what you've got to remember is they're being brought here by human traffickers, right? Now, the human traffickers don't stop at Dover. They don't go, oh, there you are, I've delivered you now, so I've collected my £5,000, I can go back and go the other way. No, because what they're doing is they pass an awful lot of these people on to a criminal enterprise which operates in this country. We know for a fact that most of the Albanians who came over on boats ended up in prison. An awful lot of people in this country are in prison from Albania, the biggest representation of any foreign nation. Why? Because they're involved in criminal activity. You know, you don't have to be, you know, in any way a seer to know that. It's true.
Yeah, but that's fine. But we're agreeing on that. All I'm saying is that my fury is aimed at those people who won't deal with this rather than the individuals concerned. And when people commit crimes, you're exactly right, they should be dealt with. And one of the things that I did think was funny was that when we've got a situation where we're discussing the conditions on the barge, which, by the way, you know, I'm not bothered about the fact they've got good conditions. But again, one of the frustrations for the public looking on is we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis in which people are absolutely terrified. They're going to lose their homes. They can't afford you know, to pay for everyday events. And then one of the things which the government has emphasised to get, you know, so that people won't accuse them of being mean, is they say there's don't worry, there's a shuttle service bus that runs every hour into town.
Yeah.
You think, oh, that's better than round here where you can't get a bus.
Yeah, it's better than where my kids live. They can't get a bus anywhere. I have to drive them everywhere.
So all the time we're frustrated because we're constantly being told that we must empathise with the young migrants who are on the barge or won't get on the barge and their conditions, whereas the state of the nation more broadly is far more parlous than a lot of what those young people are going through.
Right. And also what we could say is if you're frightened of getting on the boat and the barge because you're scared of water, how about you get on this plane and we'll take you to Rwanda and then you can stay there. There's no water anywhere near where you're going to be. You don't even have to have a shower if you're that frightened. Which
by the way, there is something really horrible about this as well, which is, you know, when they say you're frightened of water, this causes trauma and mental health problems. I used to work in mental health, so it's something I'm particularly interested in. There's a genuine crisis in a lack of support for people with mental health problems, genuine, real mental distress. You can't get that support. There's something about the use of that term. It's a mental health issue, you know, their mental health will suffer, which is, again, deployed by professionals in this country, lawyers and NGOs, and even some people in mental health, shamefully.
Yeah.
You say that all the time. Well, that just makes a mockery of people who are really in serious distress.
Of course it does. In the same way that these illegal migrants, and I do take your point that why wouldn't they take advantage of a situation? But they are now being sort of harmful to those who want to come here legally and claim asylum legally, who actually are genuinely fleeing a war zone or genuinely fleeing some kind of torture. You know, because most of these people are not.
And the other thing is that the whole thing is going to lead to a real discrediting, by the way, of lawyers and solicitors.
Yeah.
You can see that people are becoming very cynical now about the rule of law, because they just think, well, it's just used and exploited all the time by partisan lawyers, who are not meant to be partisan, by the way, to represent only one side.
Right.
And we saw this more broadly earlier in the year when there was a group of lawyers who said that they wouldn't prosecute Just Stop Oil protesters because they thought they were on the right side. Well, that's not the way the law's meant to operate.